Vleet. I thought this was going to be the most mid interview ever, or pointless. And immediately, the IWC is all over this, and I'm seeing him blast Tony Khan, and we're going to actually watch some of this right now.
Could tell that well, anyways, I always find a way to say this every day, so I think everyone should too say fuck Tony Khan. I could tell that he didn't want me there. He offered me like a year and a half. I was like, bro, I just did Stadium Stampede twice. Like, don't act like Stadium Stampede didn't put AEW on the map. I was in the debut episode. I was the big spoiler, and you offer me 18 months after all that. So it was that and the way that he started running the business that it really, like, he wasn't a professional. Like, after all the Punk shit that went down, the boys got together and we had a meeting, and this was the boys only, no office. All right. We're on Sting's in there, show, Jericho, Bryan, Mox, they're all standing at the front, kind of like talking us through this shit. And lo and behold, who comes into the room storming in? Daddy's little billionaire. And he's like yelling at us because I think it was Dax and Cash and Wheeler didn't want to come in. They didn't like the storyline, so they refused to come to TV that day. And he was like, listen, I'll put you in a 6-man 6 minutes before the show, and you're going to do it. And we're all just like, all feeling disrespected. And I still to this day wish I would have stood up and said, you know, a lot of things. But like, you just told Sting that you're going to put him in a 6-man in 6 minutes, but then you're going to honor him for his retirement. We became his little playthings. We had to wait outside his office. His storylines were very good at debuting, but he could never carry anything through. And it got to the point where
proudest moments are when patients come to my office and I've seen them.
All right. You're turning this into advertisements.
All right. So that was Jake Hager doing God's work about AEW and Tony Khan. So I'll let you take this first because you seem so excited to talk about this.
So it was funny because, you know, they put each other over, obviously, like any other interview when they open it up, and then talk about, I guess it was like the birth of AEW in 2019 when the last time Hager was interviewed by Chris. And then like they talk about the first interview they did, which was like in 2010 when he was world champion. Shortly after that, he's like, what are you drinking? And he's got me as a drinker. I'm popping. He's got a full glass of scotch. So then he goes into the Tony rebuttal. And then, like, you know, he talks about how, like, he puts over Jericho. He's number one on his Mount Rushmore. And obviously they have a lot of history together. They were in 2 factions in AEW. Jericho put him over in WWE, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, look, I'm happy everything I got to do with him. But at the same time, there's so much complaints he had with how he was used or the ideas he was pitched were always shot down. And he just felt like he was just kind of always like discredited. So it was cool just to kind of hear him, you know, crap on people. Dax did, you know, I don't know if you saw the thing on social media, but he even.
I have it. I was going to read it. I have it up. So I'll put that up.
All right, go for it.
So if you guys can read that on screen, can't read it on screen, I will read it for you. Dax responded on X saying, Cash and I were at all talent-only meetings that was called by Bryan, Jericho, and Mox. Tony never interrupted. Cash and I have never refused to show up to work, and I dare to say, if you look at our schedule since Collision started, we're the most consistent talent that makes both shows every week. I'm not really sure where all this is coming from, but it's mostly not true. Go ahead.
Which shortly after Jake, he posted then text thread with Hager, and Hager just pretty much apologized to him and said, hey, I shouldn't have worded as that as I thought. I said I thought, but I shouldn't have said you guys' names unless I was sure. Just they're like any of these good podcasts, especially when they're focusing on stuff that's 2-year-old drama. It's everything could be hearsay. Who knows when or what day or what time of the hour they're recapping this, but other things could be altering his view on it. But obviously he's not thrilled, and I think he has every right to not be thrilled with how he was used for his 4 or 5 years with the company. So there's obviously a lot of other nooks and crannies about the show that went on for over an hour, but definitely a good watch, a good listen. Highly recommend.
Yeah. So when it comes to that, a lot of guys pretty much, especially the bigger names and the guys that were pretty much there from the beginning, they've been kind of silent about what things are going on. Like Cody, you can't get Cody to say anything. And I don't think he's really going to unless he ends up writing a tell-all book or whatever. Britt Baker, we don't know what's going on with her. We haven't really heard her say anything. The only people we really hear stuff from are like the day one guys who kind of didn't make it. Like you don't really hear much from Joey Janela, for example, about the whole situation. But Hager said essentially what we all have said for the longest time. And kind of like small stuff that we heard in passing. Tony's good at debuts. We've always agreed with that. But when it comes to everything else, everything is sus. And when you hear about the booking, because I can't tell you how many times, like you were the biggest AEW guy, and at a certain point in time, you tapped in like, what the hell are you talking? What is going on? So pretty much somebody kind of rectified exactly what we're saying when it comes to Tony Khan. And we're going to get to this about somebody else in a little bit, but it's really interesting about like how that place is actually run, because from everything that Hager's saying, even Tony can't manage a target. So I don't know. I thought it was good to hear, especially from somebody from him, because like I said, I thought that going into this was going to be like a mid-interview or something completely throwaway, but we came out with a lot of information. So, I don't want to say a lot of – well, I'll say a lot of information because he hit on even his work.
I doubt we mentioned this, but it was funny. Like when Cora Jade was released, like Punk gave a little sentimental thing on his story about her, and he says, please stay, like I know you'll reach some heights wherever you end up. Please stay away from TK.
That's the thing. Everybody has – that's the thing, AEW is nice. Become like I said, formulaic in a place there. It's like, do you really want to go there? Because I can't tell you how many guys, like I said, the debuts, but after that, it's downhill from there. Like my beloved Deonna Purrazzo, like where is she?
So I mean, and not to just be like full defense for them, but it's kind of like everything can be compared. Like I was reading somebody like, put this list up of like the 15 horrible booking decisions since Triple H has been in charge. Half that list, I'm like, Vince did that. Do not act like Vince did that too. If we're like, you could literally, just change the name, character, or championship. Like Vince did the same crap. And it's like, sure, people did debut and will debut in AEW, and then unfortunately will flounder, which has happened with more names that came from NXT to the main roster than didn't happen. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that it's like, it's predictable. But it's going to happen both ways. However, there are people like Tony Storm, like Swerve Strickland, Samoa Joe, who obviously was already a bona fide legend, who did get to AEW and did reach, heights that they did not in WWE.
Yeah, for sure. But like even I didn't finish it, but I did kind of like I did catch in passing that he was supposed to beat Cena for Cena's title when he cashed the Money in the Bank. Cena refused to lose to him. I did catch that tidbit, but definitely an interview that I'm actually like really looking forward to actually finishing, because from what I was skimming through, it was a lot of good stuff there, a lot of good stories, especially in that like weird time that WWE was in like in 2010 when Swagger was the champion, because that was like a really weird time in the company. And they were really trying to find something. And Swagger was one guy they actually tried to. They tried to make him more serious, but it didn't work. I'm not sure if they really hit on the stuff where he came back with Dutch Mantel. I know.
So they do talk about that. He actually he refers to that as his favorite time in the career. Also, that like in wrestling and in life, he learned more from Dutch riding with him than ever. There's a lot of depth they go into that. One other tidbit on it, and you could go in the archive back 6 years and listening to episodes from when we were reviewing the early year of Dynamite. I by no means, day one episode of the show, Jack Swagger was never on my radar, never somebody I was a fan of, didn't like his look, didn't like the gimmick, whatever. However, he did have some accolades in WWE. He did have that Luger spot debut on Dynamite. Whole different look, not clean shaved, better haircut, has a beard, aligned with Jericho. At the end of the day, it's like, cool. Like, Tony should have been able to turn wrestling fans and make people like him. I mean, he had feuds and matches like where, I think he probably challenged Cody early on for like the TNT title. I think he had a feud with Mox for the world title. And like, in a way, like, he never got to any accolade. Like, he was really a threat kind of on and off for the first 2 years, but then he was always a joke. And he does get into some funny tidbits with some ideas he had for stuff he could have done as part of the Jericho Appreciation Society that they didn't go with, especially because he became like a comedic act. But it was also, again, one of those things. They tried always legitimizing him by JR was always putting over undefeated MMA, undefeated MMA. Well, how are you going to advertise that this guy's undefeated in MMA, but he can't really get a win that matters in AEW?
Yeah, makes sense.
Very counterproductive.
Makes sense. So you kind of touched on something about Jack Swagger. We're going to move on and talk about his GOAT,